Q&A. Link description has the other video.
Also, live work. But then something else that seems a little more suspect to me, which is that they seem to have a certain kind of fervor, and also a certain kind of arrogance as if this were it. This was everything. I can see this as sort of like strengthening people's selfhood or something, making them more effective in the world, better social communicators, etc. But there's something about it as if it were a substitute for any other spiritual practice, or meditation, or any kind of path, transpersonal, transcendental. Yeah. So, what if you can comment?
First of all, I think that one of the things I think is helpful is to recognize that the training is not the end of something. In other words, people don't go to the training and they start the training, they get done with the training, they're done with the training, they walk out with whatever they're going to get. I mean, the research clearly demonstrates that. It shows changes of improvements over time. When they did testing before and after, and then a few months later, there was whatever value there was right after the training. But those places where people had improved, they continue to improve over time. So it's clearly a process. And the most difficult part of the process for a lot of people is just when they get out of the training. And I'll tell you what I think it is, in part. I think it's a couple things. First of all, if I remember the first time I dove underwater with a mask and water clear enough to be able to see, but there's something to see. For 3 days afterwards, whenever I closed my eyes, what I saw was what I'd seen underwater. And I could literally, it just had so incredible impact on me. I want to leave that out. When I closed my eyes, for 3 days afterwards, I could see that scene underwater, those scenes that I'd seen underwater. And I talked about that to everybody. I did, because that was what was up for me. That had been a very deep, profound, moving experience for me. I've had one or two others, and I behaved the same way when they have. And then over time, I integrate the experience. And then instead of bringing it up all the time, I tend to bring it up when it's a little bit more appropriate.
I guess my question is more like, do you think that, are you saying, from what I've heard from some of the people there, is that somehow getting what you get out of the training is equivalent to some kind of enlightenment experience, some kind of transcendental realization, some kind of substitute for what we normally think of religious or spiritual goals?
Well, okay. Is Zen a religion? I mean, I'm asking just so I know.
I think it's a religion that's all, but had religious aspects, which are, sort of structurally, culturally.
So the religious aspects are more Buddhist. I don't care how they come down with. I just want to know how
to think. The spiritual aspect, which I would say is more like the practice.
Okay. So, yeah. So I don't think that that's religious at all. I don't think. Let's make a distinction. I don't think most religions are very religious. So let's talk about the kind of stuff of religion, and then let's talk about the truth of religion. I don't think that has got much of the stuff of religion, except that people go through a phase in what we would call experiencing that internal mechanism out. So we know that mechanism is existing because it gets triggered an awful lot in people, not just in us, I mean, everywhere. Like the mechanism of transference is inherent in people and gets triggered oftentimes. So as I said, when I was answering Dick, a lot of stuff which is brought up in the training is brought up to deal with it. So a lot of these expressions are brought up so as to complete the expression. Freud talks about transference, utilizing it in the therapeutic process to change it from something that people think is real to something which they realize is a memory. We would call it completing the experience, a shift of the epistemological domain from a place where there's no discrimination to a place where there is discrimination. So in part, some of the things that you're observing and concluding that, this is kind of religious-like, I think are those kinds of things. First of all, I think that there's the enthusiasm, which is kind of natural, adapted to everybody. Nothing pernicious about that one. Then there's the kind of fervor thing, which can have elements of perniciousness in it. And as far as we can tell, and the research is not bad, and certainly our observation is pretty good, that's a phase through which many people go, but in which almost no one seems to get stuck, and through which they go fairly quickly, unfortunately very high-profiledly. We'd rather be a little bit more quiet in that phase.
I guess what I'm trying to get is more like your view of it, is getting gifts or whatever you get from training. In your eyes, is this somehow equivalent to what Zen people would call enlightenment?
Yeah, it is.
It's equivalent. You get that in 2 weekends? Or?
Yeah, no, you can't get it in 2 weekends. So if it takes you 2 weekends, you didn't get enlightenment. Enlightenment does not take 2 weekends. Enlightenment takes no time. See, the 2 weekends are all a waste of time. We could eliminate those and just have the enlightenment, we would do that. I know lots of people are infuriated by the notion that enlightenment is possible without long practice and great struggle. I consider that notion to be nothing more than a notion. It may be a notion born out by lots of experience, but so were the notions that supported the notion that the earth was flat.
Well, for example, the Buddhists would say you're enlightened already. You don't have the practice to get enlightened, right? So that's similar. But nonetheless, you still have to practice because there's a long path of realization, which is you can say I'm enlightened, sure, and that's a philosophy. You're enlightened, sure, and have to look so enlightened, you can sort of pretend we're enlightened, but there's still some kind of realization that has to happen over a long period. They can have enlightenment experiences, and they're not trusted, particularly in Buddhism, for example, at all. It's just another experience. It's some kind of realization of the life.
Okay, let me tell you what I think happens. I agree with everything you said, and I'm not trying to be nice about it. What you said reflects my experience and my observations. I do, however, think that it's possible to put the end at the beginning and then do the process.
But so just to get it right, you are saying S is the equivalent of what the...
The word equivalent is a silly word given what you're talking about.
It does the same thing as a great tradition.
You're not going to trap me into saying that because that's nonsense. It's the same kind of nonsense that keeps people from realizing that they're already enlightened. See, let me share an experience with you, and I know it'll parallel your experience. People are willing to give up anything to get enlightened. You and I both know people who've given up wealth, given up jobs, people who give up families, I know people who've given up their health. People will give up anything to get enlightened. Give up talking, give up sex, give up, just you name it, they will give it up. There's only one thing people will not give up to get enlightened. They will do everything they know to do to hold on to this, no matter what. There's vast stretches of literature about that support them. The one thing people will not give up to get enlightened is that they're not enlightened. And for me, that's the big holdout, not all that other stuff.
But there's also, like in the traditions, there's a lot of warning about thinking that you're enlightened. That's one of the greatest dangers.
That's why we don't discuss it with people. But discussing enlightenment is not enlightenment. So we don't talk about enlightenment in the training very much. I mean, we talk about it, but kind of not too much.
I'm wondering why you're avoiding that question of is this the same kind of enlightenment you're talking about?
But those who know don't tell, and those who tell don't know.
We're going to make a comment. I'd always heard that Est did seem to claim that it provided something that was the equivalent of enlightenment and was just as serious a experience, just a series of state, of valuable state, whatever you want to call it, as was provided in traditions like Zen or other various Hindu traditions. And I thought that was implausible. I didn't really think. I thought that must be some kind of exaggeration.
Well, I have never said that.
But when I went through the training,
nor would I ever say the opposite was true.
when I went through the training, the trainer did in fact seem to be saying that. I don't know if that was an eccentric trainer, if he was the only one that did it or something. But in fact, when I was there, that was my understanding. It was the understanding of the other people in the training that I talked to, that that man was telling us that what was happening to us was enlightenment, and it was just as genuine enlightenment as happened in any Zen monastery other than Himalayas, and that there were no degrees of enlightenment. It was enlightenment, period. Now that seems like an outrageous claim to me, in a way. Much of what goes on in that training seems outrageous to me. Now, what I can't figure, and I don't think if I understand that to be what the claim is, and I don't think that I agree with it, but what I can't figure out though is what's wrong. I mean, I can't figure out how it hurts people that claim is made, if in fact it does.
Well, first of all, I don't think that the claim is made. I appreciate that your conclusion is, and you were there and I wasn't, that it was made. I still don't think it was made. The reason I don't think it was made is because I've listened to many hours of trainer during the training. And I do understand how you could come to that conclusion. See, I think enlightenment is bullshit. And I think that discussions about enlightenment are bullshit. And I think making enlightenment sacred is bullshit. And what's all this conversation about? It's kind of my question about this. I also think the Buddha was dog shit. So did the fifth Zen patriarch think the Buddha was dog shit. And what I'm trying to get across is that the structure of the questions in the conversation don't allow for any enlightenment. So we're not talking about anything. We're talking about a microphone, not enlightenment. I'm not allowed to respond to you. I mean, you can't say, is this enlightenment like that enlightenment? That's counting enlightenment. That's nuts. It's truly nuts. That's a substitute for any other. That's crazy that one thing substitutes for another. In the realm of enlightenment, there aren't substitutions. They don't work in the kind of mentality that you're talking about. That kind of mentality can't hold enlightenment.
Would there be any value someone feels like, for example, meditating practice?
One of our trainers does it. One of our trainers is a Buddhist. Is a Zen Buddhist, sits, goes away, spends long times sitting and doing all that stuff.
Why would he do that?
That he would do that because he's done that. See, listen, you got it that one thing is different than the other thing. That one thing precludes the other thing. That's not the way enlightenment works. You need to go back to who's ever talking to you about enlightenment, get him to talk to you about it some more. You're talking about it inaccurately. Oh shit, I'm not kidding. Look, Suzuki Roshi wrote the book, Zen Mind, Beginner's Mind. If you're enlightened, then you're doing what enlightens people. If you're enlightened, you think enlightenment is a stage you reach. Or at least, sorry, I don't know what you think. Your statement kind of comes from, or seems to come from, the idea that enlightenment is a place you reach. Come on, there's no such thing as enlightenment. That's not
my
a bullshit.
perception comes from. Yes, okay. My perception on the part of some people.
The arrogance.
Yeah, it's this. We've been done. This is it. You don't need to do any other stuff.
No, I don't think anybody says. I can't imagine anybody saying you don't need to do other stuff. Since S graduates, when we poll them to find out what they're doing all that other stuff. I mean, they're half the room here is S graduates. People, these are those arrogant people you're talking about here. And it's interesting because Mike and I had a discussion once, and he said something about some accusation about S graduates. And I said, Mike, I think that's right. But I only know graduates who think that. I never found a person that they thought that about. So I'm waiting for one of them to not say that. That's got to be the one that they're all talking about. I'm going to find a graduate who says to me, this is the only thing. Because I can find graduates who say, hey, I know graduates who say this is the only thing. So they got to be talking about something. I'm trying to find that person. See, all the people here who completed the training don't think that's the only thing. I don't think it's the only thing. I've studied a myriad of disciplines, done a lot of different practices since 1971 and before 1971. So let me try to answer in this way. The arrogance that you perceive, I think, is there. The degree to which you think it's there, I don't think it's there quite to that degree. That is to say, I don't think it's something to be overly concerned about. But maybe that's because I watch people from the time they get out of the training like this. And I go out of my way to make sure I have interactions with early graduates, like people who completed the training 71, 72, 73, 74, just to watch what's happening to those people. And I had a big thing out in the country where we asked early graduates to come. It was very interesting. I remember those people were talking about S and S with every third word. And when they got there this time, nobody even mentioned S. And they looked great. And things were going wonderful in their lives. And they were talking about the things they were doing and how things, wonderful things were. Nobody mentioned S. And, this is like that. It's like the stink of Zen. There's the stink of S. The question is not whether the stink exists, but whether it's pernicious and whether it's long-lasting. As far as I can tell, the answer is no. And I keep watching because there's always the possibility for the answer to become yes. As to the discussion about the real nature of it, is it really enlightenment? Yeah, it's really enlightenment. So is sitting in a room. Here, this is enlightenment. Sure. See, but you think that I'm just saying that. I actually mean it. You think that's some philosophy. That's no philosophy for me.
I want to leave this
conversation, but thank you for the opportunity.
That seems like a natural conclusion of that line of questioning. Another line that I'd like to open up. I'll take a minute to sort of develop it. I know people who work for after working as, or whatever the right phrase is, and they seem to have in common that they work very hard in very long hours, and that they don't have much going on in their life except rest. A certain kind of fantasy about us that I don't necessarily credit, but which plays around the fringes of my consciousness, gets set off by this fact, and it combines with, if it is a fact, it combines with the other things that I seem to have noticed about S, which is that S is a very rapidly sort of expanding organization, and it has very high ambitions in terms of wanting to transform the society or perhaps the world, hopes to be able to end hunger in a certain number of years, and other things that seem political from a normal frame of reference. And also that it proselytizes very forceful, with great energy. Putting all of those things together, I can get into a way of viewing this, which is, it's a group of people who have some self-involved, very convoluted system of beliefs, which achieve their plausibility by their apparent possibility of spreading very rapidly, and people get.
Say that one again. I just took the last sentence.
The plausibility is a convoluted belief system, and the plausibility of the belief system is provided by the apparent ability of S to grow very rapidly. And
Okay, now I got what you're saying.
now,
So that kind of like backs up the belief, or
yeah,
appears to back up the
people
belief.
feel that they really, like the word enlightenment, or somehow have achieved something important with respect to their own
I
consciousness.
don't mind the word. I like the word.
Oh, well, so if other religious movements have worked very well as long as they were growing rapidly.
I object to other religious movements.
I know. I'm trying to pick the right words here. Other groups.
Whatever, that's other religious movements.
So you can see where I'm getting here. I mean, what would happen if suddenly S peaked and some of the plausibility structures started to break down? Some of the other groups that we looked at have really only gotten into trouble and gotten kind of crazy when it started to look like that they weren't going to change the world after all, and that the system that people have been devoted themselves wholeheartedly to for 5 or 10 years or whatever, wasn't really omnipotent, and the whole sort of shared group fantasy started to break apart, and everything got sort of crazy. Would you sort of respond to that?
First of all, it really I have to restrain myself a lot, because consistently it's this business about no yellow in the blue and green world. You said yourself it's hard to find the right word, and everybody's trying to be polite, and I appreciate you being nice about it. But you see, it's not just trying to be polite, it's not just trying to be nice about it, it's a goddamn lie. And language carried on in lies, even if they're kind of well-meaning lies, lead you to inaccurate conclusions. So if you say, I'm clearly offended, but what offends me is our willingness to carry on the conversation without getting at the truth of it. Words mean things, like they're numbers. If you add numbers together, you get answers. If you add words together, you get answers. And if you add the wrong words together, you get the wrong answers. So, see, and I think a large part of the success of S in not falling into the traps that it's possible to fall into in the arena in which we're functioning is a function of discriminations that are not ordinarily made by people. And very, very important discriminations, including word discriminations, including don't use a word when that word misrepresents what you're talking about simply because you don't happen to have a word that represents what you're talking about. Because like I said, when you add the wrong words up, you get the wrong answers. It's like when you add the wrong numbers, you get the wrong answers. I really don't think there's enough appreciation of that. See, I think there's a very big possibility of missing some of the real power and value in the work that EST is doing and in the whole development of it. If you attempt to force it into the categories which you bring to it to try to understand it. Because EST is really about the very nature of your inquiry. EST is really aimed at, the training is aimed at grasping the categories with which you deal with the world. It's not aimed at what you put into those categories. So if it's got some validity, if it's got some power, and it clearly does, or at least you have to have some question about whether it does. I mean, you can't dismiss it readily. It may be right in that area. Let's go. Let me try to illustrate by both make my point and answer your question. See, you assume that the long hours and the high commitment of staff members must be brought about by some great vision. I deny that that's true. That's why I work long hours, and I work real long hours. I'm very committed. See, but I say committed, and I know the thought that goes through people's minds. Like he believes in what he's. I don't believe in what I'm doing at all. I have absolutely no belief in what I'm doing. I know that I already know how it's going to turn out. The way it turns out is a fait accompli. I mean, there's nothing I can do about the way it's going to turn out. I know exactly how it's going to turn out. It's going to turn out exactly like it turns out. It's been doing that for eons. So you say, but then Werner, what's your motive? What the hell are you working all those hours for? I'm not motivated. There isn't any motive. There's no damn vision motivating me. If I stop doing it tomorrow, it won't make a damn bit of difference. And if I keep doing it right to the end, it won't make any difference. The only thing that's going to happen is what happens. Now, but that doesn't fit into our structure. That doesn't fit into our categories. We know damn right well that you don't get up in the morning unless you've got a motive. Well, that's what you know damn right well. That's a great explanation. Man, you can explain people's behavior, but you can't do one thing, not one damn thing, to bring an ounce of satisfaction into people's lives, to bring an ounce of a sense of wholeness and completeness into people's lives with that theory, no matter how good you get at it. Because the theory is essentially a theory of explanation, not a theory of causality. It doesn't cause it. It doesn't get at the cause of things. So, I'm working my ass off at making happen what's going to happen. I don't have any vision. In one sense, I'm totally clear about what's going to happen. What's going to happen is what happens. In the other sense, if you ask me to formulate that, I can't do it. I don't know what's going to happen in form. So I think that what is really very badly, see, we have a structure in which it's important to know where you're going. I don't have any idea where I'm going. I don't know where I'm going. And I'm not selling some vision. And I'm not selling some ideal. I know where I'm coming from. And I think that the people on staff know where they're coming from. And I think that it's a great excitement to them to discover where that takes them day by day, week by week. And it's why we don't have any problems throwing things up. So we're going to, in about 3 months from now, there won't be any est. The sands will cover it over whatever est was. And wherever those sands are, something will be built anew. And this is the only organization which change doesn't bother anybody. See, if I'm coming from this room, it doesn't matter where I am. I'm coming from the room. You say, well, you've been going that way. Don't go that way. Go this way. Fine. I'm still coming from the room. See, if my life is around where I'm going to get, and you make me change, then it's upsetting. If my life is about where I'm coming from, if I'm starting at the end and going then through the process, instead of going through the process to get to the end, or if I start at the end and go through the change, no problem. So, why do people work long hours? They work long hours because there's work to be done, and doing the work is very satisfying. I didn't say it was easy or pleasant. I said it was satisfying. They work long hours because in that opportunity, they experience the opportunity to make a difference. Not to make things different, see, but to make a difference. They experience the opportunity of being able to make a contribution, of being able to be useful, and they don't experience that opportunity in a lot of places in the world. Most of what we have a chance to do, it's like burnout. It's interesting. I always thought therapists burned out. But there's an article in the Wall Street Journal today, managers are now burning out, if you can believe it. So, like that. And I'll tell you the one thing that burns our people out. It's a really interesting thing, Dick. And we have people who burn out. And you'll like this. The one thing that burns our people out is when they think they got it. It destroys them. It's amazing. And you can watch it happen And it's happened with a couple people I've been watching very closely. So it's just, it takes a matter of months before it's just going through the motions. I mean, it's just remarkable. And it starts happening at exactly that moment when they figure they got it made, they got it together, they understand it now. It's no more, it's amazing. And it's so deadly. I mean, it actually, it's sad. I mean, it's really sad. It is really, truly sad. And they're very successful. They want to be very successful. But, they've been very well trained. The people I'm thinking about, they've been very well trained. And they know how to get it done, how to do it. But it never has the quality of making a difference again. It never has the quality of making a difference.
How they come out? They finally.
Some do. So the jury is still out on some. But some, I don't think some will. It's very clear to me that everybody will. So I'm not talking in that context. Maybe this time also.
Let me say back to you one point, make sure that I got it. You're saying, I think that as people won't flip out and get crazy if the world doesn't somehow get transformed from a certain point of view, because they don't have a certain point of view about how the world's going to be transformed. They don't have a belief structure that has to be confirmed. Which I think that's valid. I think that is a difference between best and some of the other groups.
The other thing, Dick, is that they don't think they're good. Therefore, they're not made crazy by somebody saying they're bad. See, it's not, I don't think that's as good. I don't think it's righteous. I don't think it's God's work. God is not talking to me personally any differently than she talks to everybody. There's no great mission. Or, there's a great mission, but it's the great mission everybody's on. That's the great mission. It's not, we have no private access to the mission and no special knowledge about the mission. We got what we got. Like everybody's got what they got. I think these silly, sorry, they're not still silly. They're statements. How do they say it? Statements without meaning. The tautology is a statement without meaning. Isn't that so?
Its meaning is definitional. It's a very definition of words.
Okay, so like that. So yeah, that's right. What you said, I think, is very true. See, the thing which is really difficult, and we notice this a lot in the work that we're doing in development around the world, is that people cannot believe that there's something that moves people other than motivation. They cannot. They just no possibility of ontology as something which is behind it. It's not possible. Therefore, if you see somebody moving, by God, they got to be up to something. They got to be moving towards something. It can't be that they're just moving. Yeah. I suggested if you read what we call the source document for the Hunger Project, that you would see that what I've just said is both true and they have a vision. And that the vision doesn't preclude what I just said. The Hunger Project is very, very, very kind of, how can I tell you? I can't try to do this fast. It's the whole story. So the Hunger Project's mission is to create a context, the end of hunger. Now, to do that only would be kind of being half-assed, if you will. Therefore, you have to face up to also creating a goal, the end of hunger. But it's the context, which is the Hunger Project's job. And therefore, in a context, the end of hunger, what is an expression of the end of hunger. Therefore, and this really speaks a little bit to what you said. So you don't fail in the context. And since that's what is really at the base of it.
You could fail in that vision.
Yeah, you can fail, and you will fail in the objectives. One hopes not to fail ultimately, but one knows one will fail in the objectives. That's a part of the expression of the context of succeeding. In the context of succeeding, failure is contained. Therefore, failure is not invalidating. Failure doesn't destroy anything. As a matter of fact, it forwards that.
Okay, great. Hope you're having the best day ever. Peace, love. Bye-bye. Later.